Hi friends, this is Louise from Made by Elle, and today I am so excited to share the Popper Backpack for Minis with you. This is a bag that has, in one form or another, lived in my head for at least 3 years, maybe 4, and I am just really very excited to share it with you. This version is a stuffy, nice and cuddly, ridiculously cute, has 2 zipper pockets, one on the front, wiggle, 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 and then one on the back. It is a backpack with adjustable straps. One on the back has card slots, and there are instructions in the pattern to omit the card slots if you don't want to include them. I made one for my not yet 2-year-old grandson. He clearly didn't wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. It's a really deep pocket back here. He clearly, he doesn't have an Amex or a Discover or anything yet. So, but my thought was that, when we took my kids and my grandkids to my grandson to the parks and stuff, to like Disney World or anything, they each had their own passes, and so if they're feeling very independent, then maybe you want to let them keep their pass inside of their bag. If they have souvenir money or gift cards or anything like that, then there'd be a way for mom or dad to have one less thing to have to keep track of. He's just really cute. My testers did an absolutely amazing job with getting me some of the cutest pictures I've ever seen in my life. He's just a lot of fun. Oh, and since he's a stuffy, with extra focus on padding in the head, he doubles as a travel pillow for when the kiddos fall asleep in the car, in their stroller, in the grocery cart. But yeah, so I am really excited. I think he's a fun, quick make, and I hope you love him as much as I do. So, rower. Let's get to sewing. Wait, that wasn't good. Rower. 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 Let's go over the pattern pieces. I have got 2 of the main panels, and they are cut mirrored. I have already made the marks on, this is my front, so I've made the marks on here according to the pattern piece for where I'm going to cut this and where the center of this is going to be for aligning my zipper. I've done the same thing for the rear piece. I've made the marks here and here for where I'm cutting it and for where the center is to align my zipper. The marks for my upper strap connector, the mark for my upper strap connector, and the 2 marks for my lower strap connectors. I have got the piece for my upper strap connector, my 2 lower strap connectors. I only need 4 zipper tabs, but I've cut an extra one to try and match up my pattern as much as possible. I have got the pieces for my front pocket and the pieces for my back pocket with the card slots. The card slot piece has the markings on it according to the instructions in the pattern. And all pieces are interfaced with SewFuse, which is an equivalent of SF101. Let's go over the hardware that we'll need. We've got 2 zippers, and the sizes for them are listed in the pattern. Got 2 swivel hooks. I've got 2 of these triangle connectors. I'm not sure if they will work for the thickness of the fabric I'm using. My fabric is actually flannel, and I don't know if it's going to be too thick to go through these, so I've got 2 rectangle rings as well, just in case. I'm using webbing for the strap. Sometimes seatbelt webbing doesn't really work well with these kind of tri-glides, so I've got this one in as well, just in case it won't hold with this. I've got my bag tag, and then I've got these 2 absolutely, completely, totally adorable zipper pulls, the egg and the foot, from Atelier Fiber Arts. And I've used the egg and the foot on each of the poppers that I've made, and they are just so cute. I love them so much. I've got to order more. I'm almost out. So, but I think they're so cute. Just look at them. We're going to build our upper and lower strap connectors now. I've made marks on the wrong side of all of my pieces, and I've laid some tape. We're going to start by folding our edges in to this line. On both ends. You can use tape, glue, you can clip it. I am sewing on an industrial machine, a Thor 1541. It's a GC 1541S. So I don't have to worry about using double-sided tape. You will see me use double-sided tape for everything. But if you're on a domestic, you could glue this. You could place double-sided tape outside of your seam allowance. Move my trash can. Place double-sided tape outside of your seam allowance, or you could just clip it. It will work regardless. And then I'm going to fold this. I think Beth calls it like hot dog style. Fold it in to meet that center line. I'm going to fold it right up to the center line because we're not folding it again after this. So I'm butting these right up against each other. And that's the first one. I'm going to do the same thing for, this is our upper strap connector. I'm going to do the same thing for the two lower strap connectors. All right, I folded the upper and lower strap connectors together, and I've made the marks on the back side of all three for the center. We're going to sew all the way around the upper strap connector with the seam allowance stated in the pattern. I'm going to start on the end so that I can backstitch, and it will be hidden when the connector is on the bag. So I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. I'm sewing with a 3mm stitch length. Now we're going to sew down this again in the amount specified in the pattern to hold down the inner seams. I'm going to back stitch again at the beginning and end. And this is what our completed upper strap connector looks like. You can see that it's pretty close to the center of the seam there. The tape will hold it down. Now we are going to sew our lower strap connectors. And we are going to sew these down both long sides, not all the way around, just down the two long sides with the seam allowance listed in the pattern. We're going to back stitch at the beginning and end. And we're going to do the same for this other one. Working on the lower strap connectors now, and I got into the zone and put my tape down and started folding them and realized I hadn't have the video on. I didn't have the video going, so I took it apart. Tape's already down though. I've laid the tape at the center mark and I'm folding one end up to that center mark and clipping. Do the same thing for the other one. Fold one end up to the center mark. I'm using tape, and I will say this probably 30 times in this video. I use tape. You can glue it, you can clip it. You don't have to clip it. You don't have to glue it or tape it. You can just clip it. You could be a daredevil and do none of the above and do something else. It'll all work. Now, what we want to do is, this is the wrong side up. I've turned my clips to make it easier for y'all to see which is the wrong side. So the top and then the wrong side. We're going to slide our hook onto here, lay another piece of tape, and sandwich that down in like that. I use the Wah-Whack Hyper Stick tape. I was recently in San Diego with my son and daughter-in-law and my youngest grand. And my youngest grand is not yet 2, already roughly the size of a linebacker and constantly full of energy. And so I offered to leave a roll of this tape with my son and daughter-in-law if they felt the need to like stick him to a wall to get a couple minutes break one day. So they didn't take me up on it, but we did have a good laugh about it. We're going to do the same thing for the other side. Now we are going to sew across the right side of our lower strap connectors as close as we can get to the edge of our fold here with our ring inside. And you're going to want to back stitch the beginning and end of the seam. We're going to do the same thing with the other one. Now I have got my rear panel out, and we are going to attach our lower strap connectors. Again, the marks are on the main pattern piece, and I've already transferred them over to this pattern piece. I'm going to tape down the strap connectors to hold them in place while I put them on. While I sew them down. Gotta line it up right on that line there. Press it down good. And the same thing with this one. Nope, you're off a little bit. There we go. Now we're going to sew around this, making a box. You can, if you worry about the strength of your tabs, making sure that they hold on, your connectors, making sure they hold, you can create a box and then make an X in it as well. You could add a rivet to it. You can make a box in a box, however you feel is secure. Since this is geared towards younger kids, not saying it couldn't be for an adult, because it absolutely could. I'm probably gonna, I've rocked one. So, but since I'm aiming it towards younger kids, I'm not overly worried about them filling it too full. So I am just going to do the box. You're gonna want to back stitch at the beginning and end of your seam. And the seam allowance is listed in the pattern. One of the really nice things about the Thor is that it has a built-in hump jumper, so I have a little bit less difficulty when I'm going to be ready to make this turn. I don't have as much fear of skip stitches. I don't really have to use a hump jumper on this side to keep things level. This is what my connector looks like. I made the X in the box there. It is pretty darn secure. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. Next, we're going to make the upper strap connector. So I've again got a line I've drawn here to mark the center. I'm going to fold the top into the middle. Both the top and the bottom of it. You want to make sure that you've got this butted up against each other really as well as you can, and clip it. I am going to again place tape along the middle here for when I lay this down until I can sew it in place to hold it. That's going to be a little bit too long. Now, again, I have got the mark from the pattern on my piece. This time I am aligning the top with it. I have to look at my things to figure out. I don't know if it's noticeable. If I've got it wrong side up, I can't actually tell. So I'm just going to go with it and hope it's right. Sorry, I bumped you there. We're going to lay this, sorry, there's the line. I'm going to lay it right on the line. Press it down good. What we're going to do next, a little bit tricky, I think possibly a little bit trickier on my industrial than on a domestic, but we're going to, let me try and zoom you in here. We're going to lift the top loop up, and we're going to carefully sew along right at the edge of these two seams, as close to the edge of them as we can get it. We're going to sew right along here, all the way across, back stitching at the beginning and end, and here, back stitching at beginning and end to hold this. I'm going to add another piece of tape on each side just to keep it from shifting. I do recommend gluing on this part. If you're using a domestic machine, I do recommend gluing these down on this part. You don't want to glue the whole thing down. Well, you can actually glue the whole thing down because we're sewing across the top. Ignore me. It's just my pattern. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm working on two patterns at one time, and they're similar to each other, but not the exact same. So I feel a little like I've got more than one brain trying to work in my head. And I'm not convinced that my normal brain actually works inside of my head. It doesn't need any competition in there. Okay, so now that that's held down a little bit better, we're going to go ahead and sew across there. And remember to backstitch at the beginning and end. Hopefully I've got you to where you can see. This is a little awkward, and I apologize if my fingers are in the way. I will try to keep them out. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. I backstitched a couple of times there. I just want to add some extra support here. Just give it a little bit of additional holding power. Now, what we do next is trim our strings better. Now we sew down across the top, across the top and the bottom with the seam allowance listed in the pattern. Backstitch at the beginning and end of these seams. And do the same for the bottom. And our top strap connector is completed. In the pattern, our next step is actually to construct the strap, but I have to change my thread out to do that. It's different color thread, and I don't want to do that right now. So I'm going to move on to building the zippers. The pattern tells you what length to cut your zippers and to mark the centers on the front and back of each. Why does that not look even? That's off a little bit. So I'm going to fix that mark real quick. There we go. Our shorter zipper is for our front pocket. Our longer one is for our back. And I want to put the paw, the foot, on the front. So I'm going to do that. I always want to make it easier when I am ensuring that my zipper pull is put on straight. I look and see which side the tooth is higher on, and on this one the left side is higher. So when I'm putting this on, I want to make sure that the left tooth is the one that is on top when it's coming out, as I'm lining everything up here. And see, I don't have this one right because the right tooth is coming out, so we're going to pop it off and do it again. All right, I think we're good this time though. Yep, so the left one is the one on top now, so we are good. And do the same thing for the other zipper. Right on top. I made my brain explode last night trying to match up the pattern on my bag, and I don't know that I managed it, but we're gonna see what happens here. I'm going to put tape on the ends of each of my zippers and then lay down my tabs. You can opt out of this. I have just gotten very used to doing it this way, and now my brain says it's the only way to do it. Front zipper. We'll see if I manage to match. The zipper tabs are very long intentionally. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong. It is fully intentional that they are this long because we trim them down later in the pattern. All right. I'm still going to clip this because I am a little extra like that. Then I've got the super duper tape on here. We're going to sew across both ends with the seam allowance listed in the pattern. Back stitch at the beginning and end of your seam. Same thing for this side. I'm going to do the same thing for the other zipper and be right back. All right, so our zipper tabs are sewn on. We do not top stitch our zipper tabs at this point. We want to fold them back and press them well. I recommend gluing or taping so that when we press them away, they will stay down and in place and will hold themselves. And won't move on you. All right, I'm going to set my rear zipper aside. And I'm going to get the my front popper panel. There are marks on the pattern pieces to tell you where your center is. It's not exactly where, if you fold the piece in half, for the center for this piece. So marks are given to you in the pattern, and that's what we're using for setting our zipper in place and what we're calling the center on these pieces. I am again going to lay tape across here to sew it, and I want my zipper to open right to left. So I'm going to set mine. I don't quite match. I'm very sad. And that would not quite match either. We're going to go with it. It is what it is. I'm going to lay tape along here, along my edges, to put this together. Okay. Now I'm going to peel tape. And again, I want my zipper opening to the right, so the nose of my zipper is pointing to the left. I'm going to lay this down on my center line, marched up to the center line, matched up to Alexa's talking to me.
Right now, it's you I'm talking to.
Thank you, Alexa. I want to clip this. And then I'm going to move my zipper out of the way to lay the other side down so that I don't have any bumps as I'm laying it from my zipper pull. Right. We're going to sew across here. I'm actually going to turn this right side down. And we're going to sew across here with the seam allowance listed in the pattern. Oh, that is right. So that we can see where to stop and start. And you're going to want to backstitch the beginning and end of this seam. One bit of wisdom that somebody gave me when I was sewing my first zipper, I was utterly terrified, is that seam allowance is key to having a straight zipper that is not wavy. So if you sew along your zipper with a consistent seam allowance, your zipper should not be wavy when it's done. Let me fold this away. We are not top stitching here. We do not top stitch at this point. Fold that down, press it down well, and now we attach our other side. And my center mark, the center of my zipper. I like to work to the right first, so I don't know why I just pushed that over there to get it in my way. Again, we're going to turn this to where the piece that we're sewing on, so the head piece is on top, but it is right side down, so that we can see where we need to stop and start. Back stitch at the beginning and end, and sew this down with the seam allowance listed in the pattern. And we are again going to press this away from the zipper. Now our front popper panel is complete. We do not trim these off yet, the end of our zipper tabs off yet, and we do not top stitch along here yet. We're going to do the exact same steps to complete the back of our popper, our back popper panel. This is our rear pattern piece now, and I'm again lining up the markings here, my center mark. We're going to sew across this with the seam allowance listed in the pattern. Then we're going to want to flip it over so that we can see the side that is the shaped side, so we know where to start and stop with our sewing. And we want to back stitch at the beginning and end. I'm going to press this away from our zipper. We do not top stitch here. And again, we're going to turn it to where the side that we're sewing down, the shaped side that we're sewing down, is what is on top. Sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern, back stitching at beginning and end. We'll also press this one away from our zipper and not trim it yet. We are leaving our tabs long and we are not top stitching yet. Next, we're going to build our front zipper pocket. So we have our front piece and we have our two pocket pieces that are listed in the pattern. As you can see, they are different sizes and that is intentional. We are going to turn our popper panel right side up, right side down, and we're going to fold here at our zipper. We are going to take our tallest pocket panel piece, and we are going to attach that to the top of the zipper, lining up our center mark on our piece with the center of our zipper. I'm going to again sew with my pocket piece right side up, or right side down, but on top. Pocket piece is right side down, but it is on top, so that I can see where to start and stop with my back stitching. Start and stop with my sewing and where to back stitch. And we do want to back stitch the beginning and end of this seam. We're going to sew this down with the seam allowance listed in the pattern. Now the top is sewn on. We're going to flip this around and fold it now to where the opposite edge of our pocket of our zipper tape is exposed. So our tail is right side up, our head is right side down. The pocket piece we just sewed on is now right side up. And we're going to align the centers again. And with this piece right side down against the back of our zipper, line up our center marks. and then lay this along the top here. Move my zipper pull out of the way so that I could get this laid more easily flush against the top here. Again, we're going to sew with the seam allowance listed in the pattern, back stitching at the beginning and end. Make sure all your pieces are pulled flat so that nothing gets caught in here as we're sewing it. Now both of our pocket pieces are attached. When we fold them down towards the bottom, they are off from each other by about 1/2 inch. So both of our pocket pieces, our front pocket pieces, are sewn onto our popper now. What we want to do is turn our popper wrong side down, wrong side up, face down, wrong side up. We want to fold our pocket pieces up from the zipper. Do it one at a time so that you can make sure that you get them pulled fully flat. And then we want to clip along the edges so that they don't slide when we move this around. Just a couple clips along the edges to keep them from shifting on us while we're sewing. And then we want to flip this over. We want to make marks with an erasable tool, marking tool, certain amount of distance away that is listed in the pattern. So I'm going to go off camera and draw those on real quick. And I've got my marks drawn on here. What we're going to do now is we are going to sew along the bottom only, underneath the zipper, from this line here over to this line here. We are not going to back stitch the beginning and end. You can if you want to. I'm going to pull my threads through so that the back stitching is not visible here because we're going to be piecing this seam. So I don't want it to be obvious that I've had to back stitch in multiple places. So I'm going to start here at this line. I'm going to stop here at this line, and I'm going to pull my threads through. So I'm going to leave my thread tails long at both ends so that I can pull them through. And we're going to stop at these points, start and stop at those points. So no back stitching here. Make sure that you're holding your fabric flat as you go so that your top stitching is nice and neat here. Slide my zipper pull out of the way. Pull my threads long. To tie off your threads, let me zoom it in a little bit. Grab the thread that's in the back, that's on the back of your piece, pull it up, and you see that loop that just came up there? We are going to take hold of it and pull it through. Then we are going to take these two threads and we're going to tie them in multiple knots. My friend Nicole from OK Sews showed me how to do that double loop knot the first time, and it holds your threads down really well so that they don't loosen up while you're making your next knot. Doesn't work on all materials, but it works really well on those cotton wovens. Tie multiple knots, snip them off. Do the same thing over here. Pull it up, get my loop, pull that through. I'm gonna do 1, 2, the first one. Pull it snug and see how it's holding so nicely there. Pull the next one and the next one. I don't know what that stitch is called, what that knot is called, but it just works so well to hold your first loop in place while you do the rest of them. And now what we're going to do is very carefully fold our pieces, our pocket pieces, down to the bottom. And again, we're doing them one at a time, and then we're clipping them so they don't slide on us when we turn this back over. They stay nice and lined up and will lay flat for us. And what we're doing now is on whichever side you prefer to start on. Let's slide these down a little bit. Whichever side you prefer to start on, pick up in the hole that you left off at, and you're going to sew up around the top and down at the bottom. Again, I am not going to backstitch at the beginning and end. I'm going to pull my threads through so that it won't be visible. You can backstitch. I'm just opting not to. But you're going to start in this hole or this hole, whichever one, and you're going to sew up and around and down and stop in the other side. Okay? Again, I am not backstitching at the beginning and end, so I'm pulling my threads long. I'll put my needle down some so that I can find where I want to start and stop. There we go. Hold your top flat while you do this. Move the way from your zipper. And I don't know if you can see, but oops, too close. Landed right in the hole where I stopped before. I am going to tie my threads off again. So we have completed this part of our front pocket. Now what we want to do is we want to clip along the bottom here so that we can see where we have too much, and we're going to trim that off. And we want to take the full pattern piece and want to lay it on top and use our marking tool to draw the lines here and here on our zipper tabs to show where we should trim them off. And we're going to go ahead and trim those off now. Now what we're going to do, we're going to turn our popper wrong side up, and we're going to take the shaped pattern piece, the Popper Front Pocket Trim Guide, and we're going to place it at the measurement indicated in the pattern, and we're going to draw around it. Okay, I have placed my front pocket trim guide on my zipper, top of my zipper here, aligning it as indicated in the pattern. And I've used the shape piece to draw around here. I'm now going to trim this off, and then we will resume sewing. All right, my piece is trimmed. Now I'm going to turn my popper right side up. I'm going to fold the tail up and fold the zipper up as well. And I am going to start sewing right underneath where we finished sewing with the seam allowance listed in the pattern. And I don't want to catch my zipper in this, so I'm going to obviously pick up sewing a little below the zipper and then back stitch up to it. We're going to sew all the way around this, and we obviously want to back stitch the beginning and end. You can trim down your seam allowance if you want. Not strictly necessary. There's room inside the popper for these pockets, but I know that a lot of people prefer to do so, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. I don't normally on my end though. It was wild to see how clumsy I have gotten with scissors because I've gotten so used to using my rotary cutter. It's a little scary. If Bob sees this video, he's probably going to take all my scissors away. If you have ever met me or interacted with me, you know why he'd want to take them away. All right. Now our front panel is complete. We have top stitched around our zipper, and we have got a completed working pocket. We can set our front panel aside for now. Now we're going to work on building the rear pocket pieces. The pattern is written to have card slots in the rear pocket. So if you are not going to use card slots in your rear pockets, then you can skip this part of the video. For the card slots in the pattern, there are measurements given, and it specifies where we fold for each one of those measurements. So I've got my marks already on my fabric. So we're just going to fold at each one of those, at each of the specified marks, and we're going to fold. Aligning, and when we fold, we want to make sure that we line up our side seams so that we're sewing straight. Now that we've got the particular marks folded that it tells us to fold with our fabric right side up, we're going to top stitch along these 3 folds, back stitching at the beginning and end. Need those. We repeat the steps for all 3 folds. So So what we should have now is a front panel, or a front pocket piece. Sorry, one more time. A top rear pocket piece, our card slot panel, that looks like this. Next, we are going to fold our card slot, fold these seamed lines up to the marked lines specified in the pattern. All of these measurements are outlined in the pattern, so you know exactly which line to fold which seam to and such. What we are going to do now is we're going to sew along this side edge, only along the card slots. Now, I say that we don't want to stop right here. We want to stop at the bottom of the card slots. So I'm going to, you can feel it, but I'm going to go ahead and make a mark here with where exactly I want to stop sewing. It doesn't matter if I go a stitch or two beyond that, because this will be in a seam, but still there's no reason to go, 4 inches below it if not necessary. So we're going to sew from our top card slot here down to here on each side. And I backstitch over each card slot at the top a couple of times just to reinforce them. I'm going to go ahead and check the card slots right now. Pull out my handy dandy card slot. We are not going to be sewing down the middle of this. This is what the card slot's going to be, because we're going to end up using our shaped pattern piece, our shaped pocket guide, to trim this down. So do not sew in the middle, or your card slots will not be usable this way. They would probably still be usable this way, but it actually would not be tall enough for the top one, I don't think. I think that would be right up against your zipper. We're going to base this down along the side here, back stitching again at the beginning and end, and over the card slots. And we'll do the same on the other side. And now our card slot panel is complete. All right, now we're going to construct our rear pockets. I have laid tape along the top of my two pieces, and again, just like on the front, one piece is longer than the other. The longest piece is going to be the top of the pocket, and the shorter one is going to be the bottom. In this instance, it's a lot easier to tell because the card slots are at the top of the pocket. We're going to turn our rear popper panel wrong side down. I'm going to fold the head down. So the head is turned down to expose the top of the zipper, of the back of the zipper. Our tail is wrong side up. The bottom part of our popper is wrong side up. And we're going to take our card slot piece and we're going to attach it to the raw edge of our zipper panel. I've snipped the center of my card slot piece, pocket piece, and the mark I made initially in the back of my zipper is still here. So that is how I'll line up my centers. Entire mark. Lay this down. We're going to construct these just the same way we constructed the ones on the front. Now with our pocket piece, it's on top. It's wrong side up, but on top so that we can see where to start and stop sewing. We're going to sew this on. You want to back stitch at the beginning and end. We're going to fold that up and press it away. Now we're going to fold the head further down along with the pocket piece so that we can expose the bottom of our zipper. So now our body, bottom part of our body is right side up. Our head's wrong side down, is right side down. Our top pocket piece is right side up, and the other side of our zipper, the bottom part of our zipper, the raw edge is exposed. And just want to make sure that I've got this pulled away from the zipper, and I've got the head pulled down and everything is pulled down, and that way nothing gets caught when we're sewing across here. Okay. And again, with my pocket, the rear of my pocket up so that we can see where to start and stop, I'm going to baste this on. Start back stitch at the beginning and end. Nixie has made her appearance. We have both pieces of our pocket, both pocket pieces sewn to our zipper. We want to fold them back and press them down. And we want to fold both pieces up towards the top. And we want to make sure that we pull our top up, pull the top pocket piece up, and lay it flat, make sure it's smoothed out. Then the bottom pocket piece up. And again, we're going to put a couple of clips here to hold the pieces together while we sew. And we're going to sew around our pocket just like we did on the front. Now we're going to turn our pocket right side up. I'm going to go off camera again and make the lines here to each side of the zipper for where to start and stop our sewing. I've made the marks for where I'm going to start and stop my sewing. So I'm going to start sewing at one edge and stop sewing at the other. Again, I'm going to pull my stitches through to the back. I'm not going to back stitch. It's entirely up to you if you choose to back stitch. Also, since this is intended for younger kids, up to teens, I included card slots with the idea in mind that if they were at an arcade or it was a day at a park or something like that, that it could be a situation where each child had their own pass key or their own ticket, and that having the card slots might make it a little bit easier. Or if they had, gift card money or anything like that on a vacation that was theirs to spend, that this would lighten mom and dad's load and let the littles carry their own things. But you don't have to include the card slots. I made one for my not yet 2-year-old grandson and put card slots in it. Obviously, he doesn't necessarily need card slots, but it's very adorable, and now I feel the need to buy him a gift card just because I can. Be sure to smooth your pieces away from the zipper. Don't pull. We don't want to cause any buckling in our zipper, but just smooth them down so that they're flat. Bam. Next, we're going to turn our copper panel right side down, and we're going to turn our pocket pieces, pull our pocket pieces down towards the bottom. And we're going to do them one at a time so that we can make sure they're laying flat as we go. And again, we're going to place a couple of clips to hold them in place while we sew. We're going to turn it back over right side up and pick up in this hole or this hole, whichever. We're going to do exactly what we did on the front and sew around from one hole up, over, and down to the other, whichever way you go. If you are back stitching, make sure you back stitch here as well. All right, there are birds outside the window and Nixie is losing her mind right now. Beep, beep. Excuse me, little man. Excuse me, ma'am. Thank you. And now I'm going to clip along the bottom of our pocket pieces here and trim off the excess. I am going to grab the main panel piece, our main pattern piece. I'm going to lay it on the top here so that I can draw the lines between these two. Honestly, you can see where you want to draw it, but if I put the pattern piece over it, then I know that it's right. I'm going to do that and then trim the ends of these off. And I've drawn the lines from my pattern piece, so I'm going to trim the ends of my zipper tabs off. And I'm going to grab the shaped pocket trim guide for the rear pocket, lay it on here. I'm going to draw that out and then trim that down. I've used the pocket trim guide to draw where we want to trim this down. You can see now why we did not do the card slots with a line down the middle to make two. You'll be able to put more than one card in each of these slots, but it wouldn't work if we had divided it into two. So just as we did on the front, we're going to flip our piece up. We're going to start sewing right underneath the zipper with the seam allowance listed in the pattern. We're going to sew all the way around here. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and end, and I'm again going to start with my start my sewing just past where I want to start, and then I'll reverse back to it. You can feel where your card slots are as you're sewing this, so I am just reversing over that a couple times, back stitching over them to seal them back in place. Oh, no. There she goes, running away with the cord. Running away with this thread. She's very good at that. She catches it on her tail, and then she leaves the room with it. Now we have a completely finished pocket. We have our card slots down in there. Ta-da! All right, we are ready to construct the body now to put the panels together. So with one of your panel pieces, I'm going with my front, right side up. Going to put my rear on top, and I'm going to line them up. And flip around. You want to make sure on the inside that your hardware is folded down on the one leg and up on the other, and that way the one where it's closest to the edge, it'll be out of the way when we're sewing around it with our seam allowance. I want my hardware on top just so I can feel it. And then down here along the bottom, you want to leave an opening. And I'm going to mark it with different clicks because I am notorious for forgetting. You want to leave an opening large enough for you to be able to turn this through. I do it along this here. It's got a little bit of a curve in it, but it's largely a straight area, but still leaves my tail sewn up enough that it can be stuffed. We're going to sew around the entire popper now with the seam allowance listed in our pattern, and we're going to back stitch the beginning and end. Make sure that your hardware is out of the way as you go around. And I don't believe you need to move either pocket, but if you find that you do, then go ahead and slip it aside. Back stitch at the beginning and end. Just go slow around the curves and everything will be fine. We do need to fold this card slot pocket out of the way to get to this curve right here. I folded the bottom pocket out of the way too. All right, so we've got our popper sewn together and we're going to turn it out through this hole here. I'm going to trim around the curves with my pinking shears. Okay, now I'm going to turn this right side out. A pokey outy implement. I use a squared off metal chopstick. I'm being careful as I push because I don't want to poke through, which you can do even with a squared off item. I'm going to slide up here in between my two pockets. I want to make sure are pulled down. And just go around my curves, pressing out my seam allowance to get this turned as sharp as it can be, as cleanly as it can be. This is what we're looking at now. I'm going to grab the polyfill and we will start stuffing. We want to focus primarily on the head, most of the stuffing in the head, so that it can double as a pillow when traveling in their stroller, in their car seat, on an airplane. So, and less throughout the body so that the pockets are still useful. We will stuff the arm and the foot and the tail, less in the body, most in the head. For polyfill, you want to do little bits at a time and put it in. That's how it's most effective, works best, and lets you get the best stuff for it, best stuff of your critter. It takes time to do though. So little bit by little bit, just stuff your popper. Fun fact, if you are snuggling with your cat and she hits your microphone, it will turn off. So voiceover Louise is saying that we are focusing on putting the last little bit of stuffing in. Primarily, I have stuffed the head, the arm, the foot, and the tail. I have put less in the body because I want to make sure that the pockets still work. And I'm pushing this little bit up and away from the edge so that we'll be able to sew the bottom closed. I'm checking to make sure the pocket still works. And I didn't get him too floofy. But he is still floofy, nice and squishy. Now we're going to fold our raw edges in of our turning hole and clip them. Smush your flip aside so that you can keep it out of your seam. Now I'm going to clip along the bottom of the popper. Now we're going to sew along the bottom, closing up our turning hole with the seam allowance listed in the pattern. Backstitch at the beginning and end of this seam. And our popper is completed, all squishy, soft, floofy, and ready to be loved. We're going to build our strap now. Got the tri-glide and our 2 swivel hooks. I've got my webbing wrong side up, and I've added a piece of double-sided tape to each end of my webbing. I've also made 2 marks, 1 mark at each end of the webbing. First I'm going to slide my tri-glide on, and I want the center bar of my tri-glide to sit on the mark I've made on the webbing. Then you want to fold it over and clip or tape it down. Now I'm going to sew the webbing down, and I'm going to sew right against the raw edge of the webbing. Backstitch well at the beginning and end of this seam. I'm going to sew a second row of stitches as close to the tri-glide as I can get, backstitching well at the beginning and end. Our tri-glide is now attached. We want to make sure that our webbing is not twisted. We're going to ignore me not doing this right here because I remember now that we actually need to put our swivel hook on. The marks made on the webbing are on the wrong side of the webbing, which makes it easier for us to tell which way our tri-glide needs to go on. I'm going to slide the flat part of the tri-glide onto the webbing and then just push it down, taking that end of the webbing. Now we're going to slide it wrong side down through the tri-glide up over the center bar and then back through the opposite side of the tri-glide. Now I am taking the other swivel hook and setting the flat part of it on the wrong side of the webbing and setting it right on the mark that I've drawn on the webbing. And I am again taping it down. We are going to sew along the raw edge of the webbing, back stitching at the beginning and end. We're going to sew a second row of stitches as close to the swivel hook as we can get. Back stitching at the beginning and end. Nixie and I are having a conversation about how she's starving, but she's not actually starving because she's been fed at least 47 times. But I need you to see the face that she's making because that is the face of a waif, a complete waif. Our strap is complete. We've got our two swivel hooks on, our tri-glide on so that it's adjustable. We want to slide our tri-glide all the way to the end so that our strap is fully extended. And grab our adorable completed popper. Hook one end to one of the rings, the left or the right. Slide the strap through the upper strap connector, and pull it down and connect our other swivel hook to the opposite lower strap connector. And this is what it looks like. All connected up, all ready to go. Nixie refused to model. Just as cute as can be. Extra floofy at the head, so that it'll be a nice comfy pillow. Squishy body, but not too squishy. All sewn up. And honestly, this just makes me so happy. I genuinely hope you all love this pattern as much as I do. I had the best time coming up with the idea. I've enjoyed making every one of them. Please check out my testers photos because they are truly amazing. They did such an awesome job. And I can't wait to see what you make. Please share them with me, tag me in social media, and let me see all of the wonderful dinosaurs running around out there. Thank you. Bye.